Hello everyone, Blue Star Saber here once again to do another One Piece chapter review. Chapter 1166, which is titled New Stories. This chapter is basically following up the events of the last chapter, in which we finally got to see the legendary clash of Roger and Garp teaming up to fight Rox the Sebek that we heard so much about since I believe chapter 957 in Wano's chapter in between acts, if you will, in which first told of the legendary Rox pirates. In many ways, this was probably arguably the battle that many would probably compare to the Hashiyama versus Madara battle, if you will, from Naruto. Arguably, this legendary battle between the Pirate King, his marine arch foe, Garp, the hero of the Marines, and this pirate that had the command of 3 of the 4 emperors. Arguably, people were excited, and we finally got to see the fight. And I think for the most part, that fight delivered. Arguably, it probably could have been longer, but given the fact that it's a flashback, I think it's arguably probably the longest flashback fight we ever got, and I think it delivered. But now we're here to find out what the aftermath of this battle is and how Rox D. Sebek, dies. And, and how, the world reacts, particularly in how the Giants how we will go back to the Giants of Elbaf. I've been a bit late on, reviewing this chapter, but now that I'm, managed to find some time, I'm going to do it, especially since One Piece is on a break next week, so I can at least try and do one or two more chapter reviews of One Piece, but I've also got something else to need to review as well, given that it's a certain TV show I watch is coming back. So, Anyway, before we get into the chapter, I am going to give my thoughts on this One Piece cover page, in which we see the majority of the Straw Hats, well, at least the Alabasta group, with some of the cast from Wano, eating some hot, tasty treats, from what I can tell, with a bunch of Japanese animals, and particularly foxes and tanuki, which, if I recall, they generally tend to hate each other in mythology. Given how you see with Naruto, Kurama, and Shikaku sort of hate each other. So yeah, but basically you got Luffy trying to eat it with his bare hands. It's too hot. Nami being careful with a tinfoil. So also trying to be careful when eating it. Sanji trying to help Tama eat. Tama sharing it with Sanji. Yamato having munching in her hand. Also got one in Tonton. You've got Shinobu munching it, and Usopp and Chopper doing it together. It's a nice little fun little coloured spread. And it sort of reminds me of the characters of Wano. It seems to be celebrating, I think, the beginning of winter or something. But yeah, who knows? I wonder if I didn't see any of those who dislike Wano will hate this cover, but who knows? But anyway, I suppose it's time to get to the actual cover. So, actual chapter review. Let's see. Okay. The chapter basically begins with Rox, Roger, and Garp. Knocked out cold or run out of energy, basically, and we see that Rox D. Sebek has it seems like the Domi reverse has been completely removed from him after that last combined attack, if you will. But unfortunately for protagonist, if you will, the Gods Knights have shown up, basically, particularly I believe, Figurland Garling, Saint Summers, and hold on, let me just, I've forgotten this one's name, the one that might look like Killingham's mother, but that might not actually be the case. Let's see, her name is, Maffy. Yeah, Maffy. Basically, the 3 of them have showed up, and he's thinking, nope, guess not. Roger and Garp thinking that hopefully that those 2 run, saying there's no reason to stick around and die with him. So you've basically got let's see, Rock's showing concern for both his two arguably biggest rivals. But he also has one thing also he wants to say to them. And just as Garling is about to stab him, thinking that he says, "I'm glad you stopped me," and thanking as he's been stabbed, and then let's see, is now dead, if you will. So we finally found out that it was actually St. Garling that actually ended up killing. It was actually St. Garling that ended up killing. Let's see, Rox. And just luckily for Roger and Garp, before they could possibly be killed, you got Rayleigh and Scopper Gaban, who was running towards them, turned out to actually make sure that they actually get away. So they basically weren't shown to be in danger. So for those who are theorizing that they would be in danger for Roger to unleash his hockey, that's not the case. Instead, they were there to try and rescue their captain and, of course, Garp. With let's see, I think Roger asking where Rox is, with let's see, them asking, "Are you really worried about the enemy?" and all that stuff. Actually, it's Garp that's asking. Actually, it's my mistake. It's Garp that's asking. With Garban saying, "You're concerned about the enemy," and he points out, "I'm your enemy as too." Let's see. And Roger ends up asking what happened to Rayleigh, about what happened to Rox, from which Ray has told him that Rox has been killed. You get an announcement that the island's collapsing. Let's see a Marine saying not to let any pirates escape, but as we see a lot of them escaping. And hold on, let me just oops, no, I went the wrong way here. Damn it. Oops, wrong image. Nope. Oops. We see that God Valley is, let's see, basically being destroyed by the damage that it's taken place, sort of collapsing in on itself. We see the Marines saying there's Roger's ship on the move, trying to fire it. And the narration goes absent from the pages of recorded history, as we start to see some of the survivors of God Valley, like Roger, Garp, and Medical Thing, Whitebeard and Big Mom, slightly wounded, but they're still standing. And also Kaido, who seems to have fled with his dragon form, makes sense if he can fly. Dragon, let's see, holding his gun out. Let's see, probably seemingly keeping on guard because of what he's just done. Baby Shank sleeping. We see that Ivanka and Ginny are taking care of Kuma, who is probably exhausted after trying to save at least 500 people. And Blackbeard being held by his mother's arm, probably wherever they've been sent to, probably crying over the fact that he's probably now lost his entire family minus his mother at this point. So, yeah, as you've got that. Let's see. You see lightning crossing across the island, seemingly destroying whatever remains of the thing. As narration goes, like a curtain falling on the stage, the island crumbles upon itself and was surrounded in deep mist, saying that, whoops, hold on. This broad account of what happened in the mysterious, obscure God Valley incident, with someone on Roger's ship saying, "Let's make our escape at full speed ahead," and someone laughing, "Gah ha ha," as narration goes. But after a brief moment of silence, a massive bolt of lightning with countless branches split the sky, and with that, a number of new stories began. So, yeah, you've basically got the lightning splitting the sky, destroying the thing, as all these groups of people have gone their sort of separate ways, if you will. The Yonko basically now starting to slowly form. Roger has now become the top pirate. Garp will no doubt become the hero of the Marines. And Dragon beginning his path of revolutionary and all that stuff. So you've basically got that. You see the Roger pirate ship sort of sailing here. After some time has passed, it seems. And they go the crew talk about this. We've got to wait for their captain to wake up so they can open all the treasure. all that stuff, Roger wakes up, and as hold on, let me just see if I can find it. We see Roger awake, and also we see that yes, Gloriosa has on the ship, and clearly she's trying to do her fawning eyes because, well, it's like she's probably worried that Roger might not have make it. I am very curious to see what happens next here because with her, but yeah, Roger going like, sorry to worry you all like that, with the crew just being casually, you're better now, so can you check this out? With Roger being sort of annoyed, are you really worried about me or not? Which arguably Gloriosa was. So it's almost kind of sad because it's like Roger seems to dismiss this one girl that really does seem to care about him, but he has no interest in her. Anyway, we also see Rayleigh and Shaki together, which also probably further salt in the wound for like Gloriosa. It's like Shaki got her man, but she did not because, well, basically we see Shaki here just as the pirates and as Roger says, we got Shaki out and safe and sound. Where one of the crew says, and then made off with all the treasure, but I'll get to that in a minute. But yeah, we basically got Rayleigh here with Shaki. She's got her man, and Gloriosa doesn't. But anyway, oh yeah. Let's see. Oops, no. But we got basically the Roger pirates celebrating with showing their captain all this treasure they've made off, with Roger being happy with the haul they've gotten. And but they started hearing someone crying and all that stuff, and they're like, what's all that? One of them realized it came from like inside a chest. Let's see, then they try and be careful to open it, and as we see, we get that iconic panel, let's see, but more updated now, because this panel here was shown in the film One Piece Red when you had like, we started learning a little bit of Shanks's backstory, if you will. Let's see about it. See, particularly when we learned that Shanks actually had an adopted daughter named Uta. It turns out, it was a very similar manner to how the Roger pirates found him. So that was shown in the film. Granted, Roger had his then more iconic mustache look, if you will. I mean, granted, even in the sort of data book, even like the sort of fan book, if you will, that let's see tied into the movie, had like a sketch of this with Roger with the mustache. Clearly, Oda has updated it to fit more of the current story. But yeah, but we finally got this iconic panel, and of course, the iconic panel of Baby Shanks here, and finally we see how the Roger pirates, let's see, how the Roger pirates found Shanks. Granted, arguably, since we all knew this from the film, it's no real surprise. So we knew this for a long time. But I bet for like any readers that don't watch the film or down the line or don't spoil themselves with anything of One Piece, I wouldn't be surprised. It wouldn't surprise me if this is like a sort of shocking moment. It's like, holy crap! So this is how they found Shanks. But who knows? But anyway, I probably should get back to more summarizing the chapter. So yeah, as oops. Let's see. We see that the news has spread as the narration goes, like the downfall of the Rocks pirates. The story was, of course, heavily sanitized and promoted featured the exploits of Garp the hero. So basically, narration talked about how the news spread, but a lot of stuff was censored. And as a result, let's see, propaganda just made Garp like the full-on hero of the Marines. And as a result, we end up seeing... let's see, people around the world celebrating or being shocked at Rox's death, if you will. In a very similar manner to like, let's see, how Whitebeard died. So yeah, this couple here is like shocked that the Rock Pirates are done for. This guy here celebrating Rox is dead. And these people here celebrating about how the new Garp was the real strongest man around. People shouting Garp's name, saying that he's like a true hero. which arguably probably led to the events of how Garp became so popular that the world government really couldn't get rid of Garp, if you will, if, let's say, world nobles couldn't, just because of how damn popular he is. But anyway, we cut to like Navy HQ in the Grand Line, which is here, but that's not really the panel I'm going to show. Instead, we see Garp basically outraged by the title that that he's being given on this propaganda piece, if you will, because, well, let's see. Oops, sorry. He's like going like as many of the Marines are trying to tell him to stop ripping up the paper, if you will, with Garp demanding that Morgans be brought to him, saying that he needs to answer for this, with Sengoku coming in saying to Garp needs to chill, and the government has clearly paid him off to write this. Arguably, they can't really do their own exploits for the Guards Knights and Emu, so by default, they have no choice but to, do the propaganda and give it to Garp, if you will. So, yeah, we see that, and let's see, this leads to like a bit of a conversation between Garp and Sengoku, with Sengoku talking about how the world government and the Navy are both massive organizations, saying if you include the militaries of all members of the countries, there are tens of millions of soldiers across the world, and it's impossible to be completely aware of what every last one of them is doing. So Garp is going like, so he says, so when I notice that upper management is doing something insane, he goes like, I can just look the other way, which sort of outrages Garp, and they left to a bit of a fight with each other, and he's going like, saying that this is what he hates about you, Sengoku, calling him a ladder climbing fool, with Sengoku fighting back, sorting, shut up, what is barking from the bottom of the cliff is going to accomplish, saying that, what's the point of like just standing at the bottom? Oh, by the way, we also have that doctor that healed Kobe at the end of the war here. I think it's his first appearance since that, though granted in much younger phase, but yeah, goes to show how long he's been a doctor for the Marines. But yeah, it's trying to get other Marines, trying to tell them to calm down. But after two sort of beating each other up, Garp says, if you ever turn out like them, I'm going to kill you myself, with Sengoku going like, well, with friends like you, how can I possibly go wrong? And Goku saying, don't tell me you're quitting, Garp. With Garp saying, you some kind of idiot, saying he's got plenty to protect down at the bottom of the cliff, as you call it. So basically, we see that, Sengoku has told Garp what he plans to do, while Garp tells Sengoku what he plans to do. One to climb the ladder, and one to stay around just to protect the lower grunts, if you will. But anyway, we finally, after multiple chapters of God Valley, cut back to basically Elbaf and the Giants, where we see Loki's crying, where a bunch of his animal friends are watching, wondering what's going on. As Loki seems to be remembering an encounter with Rox. Let's see, with him trying to deny Loki once again that you're not joining the crew, saying, how many times do I gotta tell you that I have to say it? To him, saying that he's not going to take kids onto his crew. And of course, Loki's just crying. With Rox and him just going like, saying, what a mess this is. Ignored by the guy he wants the attention of, but instead he's being followed around all the time by his brat of a kid. But Loki just wants to tells Rox that he thinks he's Nika. And interestingly, Rox does not seem to know what Nika is. As Loki tries to explain, he's the warrior of liberation, saying he laughs as he tears down the world. With Rox being surprised by it, like, tears down the world, but saying that he's going to be king of the world, and saying if anyone's got that kind of power, it should be Harold. And this is where you've got of like, hold on. where Rox, as we see as he's conversing with Loki, saying that, telling him that, Loki, listen, there's something somewhere out there in the world is a bunch of incredible destroyers by the name of Galala, and saying, and the guy who can actually control them is your old man. Let's see. Saying he could have all the outlaws in the world under his, his command if him and his dad, team up, saying who could possibly stop that, with Loki thinking that is so cool and asking why doesn't, his dad team up with him. And Rox explains because of love, which arguably it's love of his people, love of Ida, and love of the dream of, like, I guess you could say having giants and humans coexist. But Rox keeps telling Loki that he'll keep coming back 100 or 200 times, though we also see that Loki doesn't seem to quite understand this reason of love, arguably given his own background that he was unloved by his mother. But Loki is, of course, got the page of like newspaper of Rox's death, so he's still in grief over that. And then we cut to like and we finally cut to King Harold, and we see him. Let's see on this on an island. Let's see, this seems nice kingdom. Someone's announcing it's assault caused by King Harold, and asks if there's been any civilians hurt, but going like no. But talks about how the giant ruffian that he's beating up, saying it's so brutal and it's terrifying the spectators. With you see Harold angry and all that stuff, going mad. You still don't get, do you? With the giant apologizing, yes, I do. I'm sorry. I'll never pillage humans again. And you say, and he goes like, you don't get, none of you do. As Rox starts beating him into a pulp, as he goes like, all you scum with the size as your only quality are the ones who built the giant history of terror, and because of you, no one believes us, and they don't believe that we seek a peaceful seat among the nations of the world. And this is at this point you see civilians running away, as the giants, as some of the giants try to calm him down, saying, "Your Majesty, he's unconscious." And he goes like, "I wanted Elbaf to join the world government to avoid losing their faith." As you start to see him like, oops, wrong page. Nope. You see him crying and saying that's why he couldn't help him. As Rox says, whoever side fortune is on doesn't feel like mine. So he's asking to lend an aid. And he says, my greatest friend begged for me for help, and I turned my back on him. I left him there to die. So basically, this rage is basically him taking out on the fact that he chose not to help his friend because of like his own goals and all that stuff in his hour of need. And as a result, he feels like because of that, he let his friend die. And he feels absolutely heartbroken. And it goes to show that despite everything that went between them, Hal does consider Rox probably, in a sense, his best friend, if you will. So it's sort of real tragic that it's like the one character who abandoned his friend in the end, and as a result is now dealing with the consequences. As he starts crying how he cannot turn back from this path, and he refuses to overlook the evil of giants. You see a bunch of spectators looking on, seemingly a bit confused by what he does, but basically as a result of this, the newspaper goes like the King of the Giants becomes deranged. And then we finally cut back to arguably one of the conversations I think we've all been waiting to see is Garp and Dragon as we see the Navy HQ underground cells. And Dragon is telling his dad that he's quit. Dragon has been put in a jail cell because, well, probably for his actions of like, in God Valley of like taking control of the ship and letting some civilians in. As a result, he's probably been arrested, with him saying to his dad that he's quitting the Navy, and Garp says that he knows. And also, Dragon ends up saying that I'm disgusted with you, with Garp going like, I know, and seemingly giving him the key, seemingly helping him escape, arguably doing the opposite of what he did with Ace many, many years ago. So So Garp has done that, but anyway, we cut back to Elbaf where we see let's see, Howard is talking to Ida and Zhao, telling them he's made up his mind, saying it's time for him to set aside these half measures. And then we see Harold with his sons Loki and Hadrudin saying that you are my sons and I love you both. Going back to that one flashback, I think we saw before where he took. Let's see, I think Hadrudin was thinking back to this moment, but now we see it more of Harold in full clear picture, saying how he wants them to work together. Of course, they're not at the moment, as Harold has now gone to we see Howard has gone to Navy HQ with a giant ship, saying he wants, as he continues his words of to support Elbaf after he's gone. And let's see, the announcer goes, a Marine goes, it's an Elbaf Royal Navy ship. They're all surprised, with a Marine trying to say, I'm very sorry, King Howard, but he's been instructed not to allow you to land. And then we finally see the iconic moment of the moment we've been told about of Howard going first declaring to officers of the Navy and dignitaries of the world government, please hear him out, as he pulls out his horns. Finally, that moment we see it happening, spooking the Marines there with hold on. Oop. Let's see, my page isn't loading. Hold on, give me a sec. Let's see. I'm going to have to scroll back again. Harold is basically declaring to them, allow me the chance to atone for 1,000 years of history. I want to apologize for all the mistakes that Giantkind has made. He wishes to make this oath of peace so that children of Elbaf can live fruitful lives without harming anyone, that they can live in hand with humanity. And he says, I cannot wait for the chat. I want a chance to atone for our sins. If that means I must be a slave, so be it. As Emu looks on, realizing that he now has his chance of getting, Harold and, of course, Elbaf in his grasps. Arguably, leading down the course that Richie will probably inevitably lead to King Harold's death, ending the chapter. So yeah. Anyway, that's a bit of a summary of my chapter and thoughts on some details on certain pages, such as the Baby Shank stuff. So now for my overall views. First of all, I do like how we see from I do like how we see from at the beginning of the chapter that Garp and Rogers combined attack did undo the Domi Reversi, so it goes to show that the Domi Reversi can be undone, which might show that down the line that Luffy and maybe possibly Luffy and Loki, if they work together, might be able to undo what happened to Dory and Bruggy. Granted, I have to wait and see any other giants of Elbaf that are currently being Domi reversed right now. We'll have to wait and see how all that will take place at the very least. We have who knows who will be fighting who. If I had to guess, it does. Granted, we don't know who's going to be matching up yet. If I had to guess, either Zoro and Sanji are going to be fighting Somers and killing him, or they're going to be fighting Dory and Bruggy. Who knows? It will have to wait and see. It depends on who Oda wants who to fight with, at the very least. But it's nice to see that Rox has managed to gain some of his conscience back. But unfortunately, as we learned, it's of course too late. He's been knocked out. He no longer has any energy. Garp and Roger have no energy to save him as well. And and as we saw with Scapo, Gaban and Rayleigh here, they seem to only had enough time to save him. But I do like how Rox is just thankful that Roger in this final moment that Roger and Garp were able to stop his rampage, at least free him at the end. So it's not like he fully dies as, let's see, mind-controlled slave, if you will. But of course, he ends up dying a sort of quiet death. Arguably, let's see, he's sort of robbed of that smiling death, if you will, because it's like just arguably with the tragedy it happens, which is kind of interesting to see. Granted, this is probably like the second time, or third, I guess, if you count maybe Blackbeard with like that encounter with Whitebeard. But this is like the second time we've seen it's a confirmed member of the D clan not able to smile or laugh at their death, as we saw, as we know, Britzy, Dr. Clover, who turned out to be a D, ended up Britzy being sad about how humanity has chosen this path of destroying history, if you will, at the end of his life, which arguably can make sense, but here Rox is basically had just basically thinks he's just lost everything. It's just like isn't unable to like be happy at this moment, and just as he's like even though he's just been freed, it's like, oh man, too late, I'm screwed. So yeah, but at the very least, I do like he seemed to at least was thankful to that his two rivals were able to save him. So it shows that he does have some form of level of respect, arguably more respect than any of us probably ever thought when we first heard that, let's see, about the God Valley incident when the chapter first brought up, since it seemed like we all thought he'd have a very similar hostile rivalry with like Luffy and Blackbeard. But it turns out that wasn't really the case. So, but yeah. But anyway, I suppose I should get to like let's see, the God's Knights, if you will. We learned that basically let's see, that it wasn't actually Roger and Garp that killed him. It was in fact the God's Knights who have just finally arrived, which I will admit, I think some people might have been particularly disappointed with the God's Knights performance in the God Valley, but arguably I think it makes sense that they that they would get their butts whooped by, say, let's see, the characters they did, because these guys, arguably, they're about probably, from what most of them seem to be the Yonko, they're subordinates. They're not the Five Elders. The Five Elders are all, what we can tell, Admiral and Yonko level. The majority of the God's Knights seem to be just below that, so they're probably like Yonko Commander or just above that, if you will. From what, especially since we saw that Gunko was able to take on multiple Straw Hats at the same time. So yeah, it makes sense. As we've seen, Summer's got his butt whooped by an old Gaban. We saw him get his butt whooped by Rayleigh, who's near his prime, if you will. Maffy here got, let's see, taken out by Whitebeard and Big Mom. You would expect these Yonko characters, or let's see, future Yonko characters, to easily beat these lot. Arguably, I think the one most people like disappointed in is Garland, because, well, he got sort of beaten off screen by Rock, so he's got, seems to have gone as taken his revenge. So let's see, it seems that has given him the title champion of God Valley just by default, if you will. But arguably, I suppose this is probably most, I think, the one who probably, let's see, suffered the most of the God's Knight's reputation is probably Garland, because, well, he got beaten, and let's see, people, at least particularly me, was expecting at least Garland to probably have fought Whitebeard and wounded him, at least, given the comments he talks about how when he saw Shanks, he's reminded of that man that gave him that scar. So granted, I see that didn't actually happen in this flashback, so I am curious to see if that means Garling's going to have another encounter with Whitebeard sometime down the line that we just don't know about. Because I do think that, or maybe they did fight and we just didn't get it's just not showing it yet. I am very curious because, well, we do know about the whole Scar thing, unless maybe Whitebeard was also referring to Shamrock and maybe he fought Shamrock or something. But it'll be very interesting at the very least. But at the moment, Let's see. Granted, I know some people thinking that Garling stocks are down. Granted, of course, he did get defeated by Rocks, which is to be expected because that guy was Pirate King, arguably Pirate King level, and that guy probably was strong enough to kill an admiral. So, yeah, which is a very incredible feat. Let's see. That was like his first major pirate action. So, if Garling in this point was probably like say admiral level, he's arguably stronger than the other God's Knights, given the fact he is a champion and all those kills he managed to do. Let's see, after like having a sort of negative point advantage, you would think that Garling is probably stronger than the rest of the God's Knights. Just at the moment not on Rox's level, which arguably makes sense. Granted, I do think down the line we're going to see more of Garland's feats because the way Oda's been portraying Garling so far is that he seems to be the new second strongest on the world government side in the Celestial Dragons since becoming a God's Knight. So yeah, but let's see if some. But I have heard that some apparently saw this as like, oh, Garling's being a coward or cheap, but. You have to, I think let's see, remember, this is the world government we're talking about. This isn't like, this is not some like pirate code of honor, if you will, at least honor, let's see, we do know that Conqueror's hockey users, particularly pirate ones, tend to clash with a bit more honor, wanting to try and defeat the opponent at their best, not at their worst. The world government, is basically a authoritarian government that wants to maintain the control. They don't care how it's done. They will make sure it does. I don't think they care about wounding people. For example, Whitebeard in his old age, it slowed him down a few times, and the Marines, particularly Ikaino, took advantage of that when they could. The world government wants Rox dead. The Celestial Dragons wants Rox dead. The Davy clan dead. Let's see, he's wounded and no longer able to move, so of course they're going to stab him. I suppose this would make him. I suppose this would probably give Garland the title of Champion of God Valley for finishing off the blow, but I think it doesn't really matter. Granted, but I think it doesn't really matter how he did it. It's the fact that he did it. Granted, I do think we'll see some more feats of him down the line. Sadly, it's just not here with God Valley, which arguably I think should have been the perfect opportunity to show that. But we'll have to wait and see. Let's see. It's possible that Oda just wants to show more of Garling's feats more closer to the age that he is now and all that stuff. So there is that. So we'll have to wait and see what Oda's going to do with Garling down the future. At the very least, I do think he's likely going to end up clashing with like Dragon, maybe, or maybe even his own son Shanks. But who knows? It could also be possible that Blackbeard takes revenge for his father's death. Though that might be more symbolic of him possibly taking down Shanks, if you will, because it does seem like Blackbeard and Shanks are going to have an inevitable clash of some sort. We'll just have to wait and see in that regards. So, yeah. But anyway, I do like how we see that the island of God Valley seems to have been completely destroyed, not by an ancient weapon, but just basically due to the devastation of the battle that Roxgarp and Roger took place in, and the fact that it was so destructive that the island collapsed in on itself. And of course, like you had lightning. Let's see, you had like sort of lightning and other forces of nature taking place. We all thought it was like, okay, they're going to use Uranus, but then again, it wouldn't really make sense since, well, Uranus, they shouldn't be able to fire it, and also Uranus seems to leave some sort of impact of the rising tide, which no one in the world felt until, like, of course, the events of Egghead after Lucia was destroyed. So, yeah, I suppose it makes sense, and it just goes to show you just how destructive and powerful the devastation between 3 Pirate King level opponents were. So, yeah. But I do like how let's see. Let's see that you did get. Let's see that Rox, Rayleigh, and Gaban not only saved Roger but also Garp as well, despite the fact that they are enemies and all that stuff, which they point out to each other. And I do like it. Seems that even Garp seems to show some concern with like what happened with Rox. Arguably, probably because this is probably not the way how he wanted Rox to be defeated. Arguably, Garp would probably want it a bit more honorable way of doing so. But yeah, I mean, it's a bit disappointing that we didn't see these two get like a full-on main fight during the flashback. But then again, I guess we saw Rayleigh take out, I guess, Somers, if you will, and Gaban. We already saw him fight earlier in actually in Elbaf. So I guess Otis decides that okay, it's mostly Garp and Roger versus Roxy wants to really show. This shows a few clashes now and then, but yeah. So I don't mind that there. I do like how we get this sort of like double page spread, which shows all the sort of God Valley survivors making their way with their moves and their actions, if you will. Let's see. But Whitebeard, Kaido, and Big Mom forming their crews. Dragon just trying to make sure that what he's doing at at least gets these civilians out. Ginny and Kuma and Ivankov and Blackbeard with like now just lost everything basically, beginning their paths, if you will, like I mentioned earlier. I do like how we end up also getting to see the entire world react to the whole world reacting to like Rox's death, and similar to like let's see how Whitebeard died, because it's like arguably Rox is the first major pirate figure that has died, so arguably it makes sense that if someone like Whitebeard, the world thought Whitebeard was like this monster, they'd celebrate that. The same with Rox. Arguably Rox's goals was to like take over the world, but whether or not he would have been a better ruler for the world than, say, the world government, who knows? Probably not, but he's not as evil as the people of the world seem to think. But I wouldn't necessarily call him a good guy. But of course, the world celebrating Whitebeard's death was like they all think he's an evil pirate, but we know that Whitebeard is a decent guy. Even let's see, in all the islands that he's protecting now, then end up coming in danger as a result of him no longer being around. So that was a bit of a tragedy there, but you got some of the manner here. I do like how we see Garp is completely furious by this propaganda, because Garp is like basically does not want to take credit for stuff he doesn't feel like he fully earned by himself. Really hates the fact that it's like he teamed up with Roger, and it's like and he ended up doing a fight he didn't really necessarily wanted to do. And of course, he hates the Celestial Dragon. So yeah, he absolutely hates this. But I do like how Sengoku points out there's no way the world government is going to let you. There's no way the world government is going to let the whole story of what happened in that island go to the public, if you will. No way is that going to happen. And it's like and basically try to persuade Morgans to do the story the way they wanted. Arguably, we know that Morgans will sometimes ignore what the world government's saying, but I think since this is probably Morgans' early days of forming his new empire, if you will, he basically probably was more willing to do so just to get some like very good compensation. So we'll have to wait and see. Let's see the next time an event happens that Morgans won't go in the world government's favor, but yeah. But it's interesting that the conversation we end up seeing with Sengoku and Garp here, if you will. First thing I want to point out is that we learned that, let's see, if you count all the countries under the world government's banner, let's see, technically the world government's military goes in the millions. I don't know the exact ones, but I think some have said like around 10 million or something, but arguably makes sense since all the top Marines that we saw from Marineford were like 100,000. We know that the Alabasta Kingdom is such a large kingdom that it had like, if depending in its civil war, you had like I think 6 to 7 million soldiers, soldiers and rebel forces fighting each other. So arguably, granted, probably should be higher than 10 million then, but yeah. But if you count all the forces in the world together, that should give them like a very large amount of soldiers. Of course, granted, most of those soldiers clearly still are with like those soldiers are mostly there to protect the kingdoms, really. Granted, not all kingdoms are equal in size, as we've seen. Alabasta seems to be very exceptionally large compared to other ones, but it goes to show that, let's see, if they really needed to, they could gather millions of forces to do so. And I do wonder if perhaps Oda's thinking that, okay, with these tens of millions of things, perhaps the next time we see the Marines clash with pirates, instead of 100,000, let's see, Oda might raise the scale and up to with that and say like 1 million Marines or something, which would be a very, I guess, let's see, insane amount of numbers, because then it's like there's no way one Yonko group, Yonko's forces could take on Oros. The only way I could possibly see something like that happening is if like you got something like Joe Boy's level of hockey, which who knows, it could be possible that if there was like 1 million Marines about in the battle, say against the Straw Hats, Oda might just be wanting to give Luffy the feat of using Conqueror's Haki to knock out, let's see, 500,000, just to sort of upscale the sort of like feat he did at Fisherman Island when his crew were battling the new fisherman pirates, and he took out like 50,000 of them. So I'm just like guessing, but who knows? I very much expect the next time when we get a full-on war with the Marines, or if they take part in this final war, they might just end up getting like 1 million troops or something, or at least hundreds of more than just like the hundreds of thousands they had at Marineford. But yeah, anyway, like I said, it's nice to see this Doctor here. But yeah, but it is also interesting that we actually get to see Sengoku's things. It seems that arguably Sengoku can sometimes, given the fact knows that how large the organization is, he can sometimes look the upper way when the top brass is doing some questionable things, if you will, which arguably I think will probably put him and leave him sour with some of the One Piece's fans, is like in terms of morality with them and all that stuff, because it's like you're gonna let it slide that you see that the world government, or particularly Celestial Dragons, will do these insane sporting games of genocide, if you will. But I do see how his point of like he needs to, let's say, climb the ladder, and you also see how Garp seems to. This is the thing that clashes with Sengoku, of like you just seem to be like trying to grab power and climb the ladder, but let's see, Sengoku is just like it seems like the reason he's doing that is because he wants to climb up to the top. So it seems like he can do some changes, whether big and small, to steer the Marines in the better direction. So it seems like, at least for the time being, he's willing to look the other way when the world government does stuff. Of course, it seems like, as we saw at the end of Marineford in the Aftermath arc, if you will, that he seems to draw a line. It seems he does draw a line at some point, especially when the world government wanted to keep quiet about level 6 inmates escaping Imperial Down, and he's like, I don't give a damn about your reputation on that. Those criminals are dangerous. So eventually he seems to draw the line at some point. But granted, you'd think he'd see genocide would be the thing that would draw the line, if you will. But yeah. But I do like how you've got this sort of clashing thing. One willing to look the other way to climb the top. One, let's see, that willing to stay just to help the little guys, but refuses to climb any higher because he doesn't like what the top brass does. In some ways, you can see how both of them think this way. It's like Sengoku thinks like you need to, let's see, rise up the rank in order to change stuff, while Garp is like, you just like, screw that. I'm just, let's see, staying around to protect the little people. You can arguably see both the, let's see, points, and it's both their, let's see, reasons, and you can see a point to them both. Of course, deep down, we know in the end that it's a very flawed in the end, and because it's like because we know how corrupt the world government is, and unfortunately, let's see, they've clearly picked the wrong side in a sense, if you will. But of course, let's see, they're probably not going to realize this point until, let's see, Emu is fully revealed to the public, and the fact that he's going to try and sink the world, and that will probably finally have them properly turning against the world government. So, yeah, or at least the Celestial Dragons. So, yeah. I'll admit, Sengoku, a bit more questionable in his beliefs, but I can also see his reasoning. And Garp, I think, has remained, of course, consistent of trying to help the little guy. But at the very least, I do wonder if these two, let's see, friends, as Garp is saying, let's see, I'm not going to, let you going to go down, let's see, become a bastard like them, if you will, is able to help Sengoku persuade to possibly form the formation of Sword, if you will. But yeah. Also, I think it was nice to see a little clash between the two of them. Granted, it was a bit more of a comedic fight, so I don't know if it will help with the scaling, but I think I've been in a bit of debate with someone who thinks that Sengoku's on the par with a Garp, even though I do think Garp is the stronger Marine. But it goes to show that Sengoku can have even in a bit of a comedic fight, can go up against Garp. Granted, I would still argue Garp is probably deep down in the end stronger, but yeah. We have this sort of clash here, so yeah. I also like the sort of conversation with Dragon here. I know I've seen some people disappointed that this wasn't a bit of a longer emotional conversation, if you will. It's like, let's see, so let's see, heck, I imagine Garp saying, "You can't just quit the Marines," and Dragon says, "I've seen the evils they've done. How can you stay with them?" I was expecting something, a conversation like that, but nope, it's instead a bit more of a quiet one, if you will. Granted, it is it is nice to see that Dragon is suffering. Let's see, as it was talked about with the with his superior officer saying your actions have consequences. And Dragon not caring, we do see that he has been locked up, but it did lead, but as a result, it's led to this bit here where, let's see, Garp, it seems, is just basically come to an understanding, because arguably he's probably told that his son was there in God Valley. He knows what happened there, and he himself is disgusted. But of course, Garp is has his own resolve of staying to help the little guy. And let's see, but unfortunately, one of those little guys is his son, who's probably had all his ideals of the Marines crushed at this point, and arguably more of a new recruit. It's like he's like, "I'm done. I can't continue with this organization. I'm quitting. I don't care whether or not you agree with that or not, Dad. I'm doing it." And Garp's probably just understanding probably what his son goes through is fair enough. But also we end up seeing that Garp, at least Dragon at this point, seems to hate his father, hate what he stands for, hate what he represents at the very least. At this point, for Dragon, there's no excuse to be a part of the Marines. So as a result, he's ashamed of his father at the very least. And you can understand why Garp is just cannot seem to assort to anything except "I know" and all that stuff. So but yeah. Granted, it seems like they might become a bit more civil down the line at the very least. But as eventually Dragon left, it seemed like his own son in the care of his father to some extent. But yeah. Oh, granted, it is still kind of interesting how we get that, how Garp was I guess, we saw with his flashback with Aokiji that he complained about his son being a revolutionary. But let's see. But here he's understandable why his son would quit the Marines, even though you'd think he'd probably be a bit mad about it. But I guess it's okay, I can see why you would quit, but let's see, to become a revolutionary? Oh, come on. That's just crossing a line there or something. But I do like how Garp seems to care enough for his son to let him out of his cell. I'm not sure if he was able to get the approval of top brass to do this, or if he's doing this behind their backs or not. But it is interesting to see that this is a different contrast to his conversation with Ace back in the Marineford saga, if you will, where he goes to visit his son, his adopted grandson, but he can't really do anything. Here he does something, but then again, I suppose the situation's a bit more different. Ace is basically, let's see, priority number one, criminal for the world government. Dragon is just a regular soldier doing insubordination. Arguably, they're not going to care too much if probably Garp helps him, even though they probably would still be annoyed. But let's see, if he couldn't really help Ace at that point. So yeah, I think it makes sense there. Anyway, I do like how like I've already talked about a bit about the stuff with Roger and Shanks, but yeah, it is nice to see that Gloriosa did actually join the Roger pirates on their ship. Granted, I'm curious to see if we'll ever learn how Gloriosa got off and got completely rejected by Roger, that she eventually gave up. I'm not sure. Who knows? I am curious, but it seems like she didn't get her man, but of course we know that Rayleigh did with Shaki, and you can see. I am curious to see if both Shaki and Gloriosa both left the Roger Pirates, because we didn't really see Shaki on the crew when they did their final voyage, so I assume that they probably both got off together. I wonder if Oda will ever show that, or maybe he'll just might explain it in an SBS, because he sometimes does that these days. But yeah, like I said, it was nice to see the. I talked a bit about the One Piece Red cover, so it was nice to see the Roger Pirates finally show that moment of how they encountered and found baby Shanks. It's been building up to this bit, and I am very curious to see if Dragon down the line will finally learn that, okay, his efforts to try and rescue at least one of the babies did pay off. But yeah, but I do like the sort of interaction with the crew where Roger is like, I'm awake, but the crew's just being so casual, like, okay, that's nice. Can we go to the treasure? And it's like, did you really care? So there's that. But anyway, I do like how we are actually seeing arguably the two characters that do. Let's see that it's the. Hold on a second. I'm just going to check something. I do like how we see that. The one character that did admire Rock's Loki, we see his grief. We see how upset he is. We do know that he admired, and even seemed to resent his own father to some extent for allowing Rocks to die. And we also get a little flashback within a flashback, if you will. So we end up seeing him with Rocks in his flashback, where I do like that for once we see Rocks not outright beating the living daylights. So out of Loki instead, they actually had a bit of a conversation, which I do like how Rocks is just thinking like, I can't believe this. The person I want to talk and join me is refusing to do so. But this kid who I want nothing to do with because I don't take kids on my crew, not even as cabin boys, won't stop pestering me. But yeah, but I do like how they're able to at least have a conversation at the very least, as Loki wants to tell Rocks about how he sees how Rocks is like his hero, and he views him as like Nika. But it's very interesting to see that Rocks D. Sebek did not know about Nika, which is interesting because you'd think that because we do know that Rocks was talking about how he needs 2 devil fruits and needs Howl to have one of those devil fruits to enact his plan to take over the world and destroy the world government. Many people thought, okay, was the Gomagom, or like the Nika fruit, if you will, was that going to be one of the 2 fruits, and the other possibly being Blackbeard's Yami Yami no Mi? But it turns out, it seems like he did not know about Nika. He knows about Joe Boy. He knows that Joe Boy and Davy D. Jones were like Emu's 2 greatest enemies back in the Void Century, if you will. But he doesn't seem to know that Joe Boy had the power of Nika, and nor the fact that he was, let's see, at least in Elba Floor, he's like a laughing warrior that's regarded as a god of destruction, depending on which text you're reading. But he's not really interested in being like the one who destroys the world. He wants to take over it. So it seems like he's not necessarily interested in the Nika thing. But I do wonder if perhaps, now granted, I will admit, now depending on when this timeline happens, is this either before he tells the crew his plans or after he tells the crew his plans? It's possible that if it's before, this is how he learns about Nika, and that gives him the idea of like his plan to use like Nika, getting the Nika fruit for his like plan or not. If it's after that conversation he has with his crew, it could very well be that Rox had 2 other devil fruits for its plan, which you gotta wonder what it is. I mean, most people are thinking it's the Goma Goma no, which it was Nika and Yami Yami no Mi, because these seem to be like the 2 devil fruits that could fight, that could probably cancel out Imu's powers, if you will, or at least see give them a somewhat advantage against him. If not, it could be that Rox is actually having 2 different fruits, and I saw like this one theory from I think Mr. Moj of the let's see, when he was doing one of his like videos, and that Gecko, one of them could be, of course, let's see, Moria's Yami Yami no Mi, or his shadow fruit, which could be used to awaken the Galala giants, if you will, and let's see, have them as an undead army. Which we do see that Rox talks to Loki about this, is like, okay, let's see, only your father has, like, interesting that he seems to think only his father could destroy the world. Granted, it seems like in their last clash, Rox was able to beat Howard to go save his son and his wife, if you will, in God Valley. But it seems like he thinks that only, let's see, Howard could destroy the world. So I'm not sure if he's putting Howard above him in terms of that feat, or at least he thinks that he's more of at least equal in that, which does lead to the, like more of the conversation. But I should probably mention that it may be Moria's fruit, and possibly maybe Law's fruit, the Opi Opi no Mi, either to, I don't know, give him immortality himself, or see if it's a way for the Opi no Mi to remove the immortality that Imu has. So yeah, arguably those could be the other 2 devil fruits, but who knows, we'll have to wait and see more of what Oda's going to reveal of, I guess, Blackbeard, it's like what Rox's initial goal was. But I do like how Rox is explaining to Loki that if he teams up with his dad, they can destroy the world, and Loki just seems to so much admire this. I wouldn't be surprised if this leads to more of Loki's resentment of not, let's see, of like his father not teaming up with Rox to not have this thing happen, because it's like, you could have destroyed the world together, but you just chose to help the world government kind of situation. So I could very well see something like that happening. But I do like how Rox tries to explain to Loki that the reason they're not teamed up is because, you know, because of love, that Howard loves his people, loves, I guess you could say, Ida, and he wants to do a peaceful coexistence with the world government as a result of that. But arguably, Howard is probably naive and trusting the world government, as we see, and arguably, probably he might have been better beneficial to actually teamed up with Rox. Granted, I don't know if necessarily a world ruled by Rox pirates is necessarily good for the world. See, because arguably, if pirates came in charge, it'd be, you know, chaos. But who knows? But yeah, I do like how you've got like let's see, Loki asking about this. He gets an answer, but it doesn't seem like he fully understands it because, well, like I mentioned earlier, Loki doesn't really has received that kind of love yet. But who knows? It might be something that goes down the line that Loki sort of starts to understand why his father, and even I guess Rox to some extent, did the paths and choices that they did in the end out of love. But we'll have to wait and see. Now, I'm very curious to see if Loki thinks Blackbeard is a disgrace to like Rox's legacy or not. But yeah. So we do have that. I do like how we end up seeing Harold, let's see, reaction, and as we see, he's taking out his anger on Giant, and as a result, probably scaring a bunch of people, which probably didn't help Elbaf's reputation at the time. But as you can see, it's a moment of grief because, well, he ended up betraying his friend when he needed him in the end, which is very different because we do know that with like the last time we had, I think I recall seeing friends falling out. At least the one that comes to mind is Noland and that Shandian warrior. I've forgotten his name, but was I think Wiper's ancestor, if you will. They had a bit of a falling out, but they were able to like have that one last moment of like, let's see, make up, if you will. Harold here does not get the chance to do that, and as a result of that, his best friend is dead. He feels Ritzy so much grief and responsible for it that he's basically taking his anger out on beating this giant, even though he is already down for the count. There's no need to do so. The brutality is shocking everyone around him, and no one seems to understand why he's doing this and all that stuff. But yeah. So it's interesting to see that Harold, let's see, many people thought he might have come down in the end trying to help Rox, even if it's just take him out of his misery or something. But nope, he was completely absent for God Valley. And as a result of that, let's see, he feels absolute guilt that he let his best friend die, especially when he went there to save his family. He must be feeling awful about that, because it's probably like, if he perhaps went there, perhaps he could have saved him, or even at least saved his family. But no. He's feeling guilty, and as a result, it seems like it's driven him to the point of going extreme with his resolve now of trying to mend relations with humans and giants, no longer tolerating giants who harm humans, and arguably doing the desperate bid that he does now. But I do like how he talks to like all the important people in his life. Let's see, like his lover Ida, Zhao, who's like probably a mentor to him, and his sons. Let's see, tell him that he's about to do something, and regardless, he wants them all to try and work together, which probably you won't see Hadrulin and Loki making peace until probably the end of Elbaf, depending on what happens. But yeah, but it seems like I do like how it seems like loss of his best friend has driven him to like the point of where he rips off his own horns and does this resolve. You wondered when he was going to do that, so I suppose it makes sense that it would happen after Rox's death. So yeah, and it is a very brutal sort of like yanking. It's like, that's gotta hurt, and you can see the Marines just freaked out at the fact he did this, and Rox's declaration that he wishes to atone for 1,000 years of giant cruelty towards humans, and is willing to do anything, even becoming a slave. And arguably, you know that he has probably led himself to his downfall. You can see why he went the path he did, but it is ultimately leading to his doom. Arguably, whether or not you think he was too naive or not, who knows? But you cannot. But I think you, at the very least, you can understand his resolve. I think it makes a lot of sense. He's gone down this path. He's chosen this path. He's going down it no matter what. Even though you should argue probably have thought more about what it would enable down the line. So yeah. But yeah, overall, this chapter was a very, very good one. It's not, I wouldn't say it's as good as like all the God Valley ones, because like those ones are like phenomenal, but I think it's a very good aftermath. For the most part, it ties up many of the loose ends, if you will. Roger and Baby Shanks, seeing how I guess Rox was killed, and turns out it was actually Garland. Even though I think some people might be disappointed with Garland's performance in God Valley, but we'll see if he can ever get a chance to make it up. Seeing Garp arguing with Sengoku about Marine ranking and like staying at the bottom and all that stuff, whether or not to turn a blind eye to the world government's cruelty, if you will, and seeing why each of them take the path they do. Garp staying to stay for the little guy, Sengoku climbing the ladder to try and do some reforms, if you will, I think. The conversation between Garp and Dragon may not have been a long one, but you can understand why these two characters, being who they are, the Monkey D family seem to be men of few words towards each other, given how we had a more comedic one with like Garp is saying goodbye to Luffy and Luffy saying, okay, bye, and Garp's like, be more emotional, damn it. I want to be shown affection by my grandson. Kind of thing. But this one is a bit more serious arguably because of the more subject of like what Dragon has just gone through, if you will. Loki's grief, seeing his conversation with Rox, learning that Rox didn't necessarily know all the details of the Void Sentry, particularly Nika. But yeah, even if he did know about Joy Boy, and of course Harold's own grief over the fact that he'd let his best friend down, and now it's just he's shaking his resolve to like try and do anything to get the giants and the world government and the world and humans at peace, even though he's basically trusting the wrong people, because the world government just only sees the giants as military assets to control. So yeah, all this events will take place, and we'll have to see how let's see Harold will take how Harold will like how it will lead to Harold's inevitable death, if you will. So overall, I'd give this chapter probably a 9 out of 10. Maybe there's some minor nitpicks here and there you can have, but arguably I'd say this is a very good chapter of One Piece. And we're probably now at the final stages of this flashback that will lead to probably Harold's death, and maybe see how Loki got defeated and imprisoned by Shanks, if you will. But yeah, that's all I have to say for now. I am Blue Star Saber signing off. I hope for those who end up listening to what I said enjoy what I did. And I'll see you all next time for the next One Piece chapter review. But for now, I am Blue Star. I am Blue Star Saber signing off. Bye for now.